And sorry, don't have fancy intro because Mr. Know-It-All always does the intros. So here we are. First of all, let me say hi to everybody that's already here. Anybody that joins us, welcome. So I'll just kind of go through what you guys have in the chat so far. Godsum just says, well, not sure why. Alex says, Trump is my president. Well, technically, no, Biden is your president, but Trump will be your president in about 5 days. But he'll be everybody's president, not just yours. Mike Richards, the best thing to come out of Columbus, Ohio is here. Stan Lee says, huh? And Godson says, Marvel will die and come back every time. Well, this is interesting. So, and Stanley says, guilt stream. No. Actually, honestly, after I signed out from the stream, I made my dinner, and then as I was eating dinner, I went to check my YouTube feed with the intent of I was actually going to watch the latest Mike Winger, who's a theologian. I was going to watch his latest video. But instead, I happened to see all over the place that there was a Born Again trailer that had dropped. And so I figured, wow, I got something to talk about. Youngster says, I'm sitting on the toilet and listening to you on a Bluetooth speaker. Did not need to know that. Alex said, so what is a hopeless romantic like me supposed to do? Love Don Draper, not Ham? Yeah. Look, you can appreciate John Hamm's acting ability, but I don't know where he stands politically. Look it up. Actually, we did look it up, and John Hamm is a staunch Democrat. I don't know what you're. So if you disagree with him about him supporting the Democrats, then just who cares? He's a good actor. Why is this on the Christian stream? This is actually on all three channels that I am associated with. So it's on the Nerd Fights channel, it's on the Salty Plus channel, and it's on the Exposed channel. Just because, I don't know, just figure I'd do that in case anybody wants to super chat. I don't know. Plus, it actually unfortunately, the Exposed channel, since it has so many more subscribers, has a better chance of getting somebody to pop in. Mr. Know-It-All made a surprise appearance. No, unfortunately, I haven't even tried to reach him tonight because I talked to him earlier today, and I know, I know what he's going through. I mean, look, I'm not mad at the guy. I just wish that the circumstances were different is all. Godden says, in the first episode, will Q villain called John the Iron Hand, based off of character, play Jack Palance, and that's all. Dude, I no idea what you're talking about. And Godson says, and mine is going to be on Hosea Flamel channel. Okay. Good. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. We are here to talk about Daredevil Born Again. So we've known it was in production for some time. And in fact, they shot the entire series. Then Marvel had a rethinking of things, they decided to change their strategy because they realized that they were just putting out tons and tons of content, but the quality of said content was going down. And of course, this was very apparent in the various films and shows that came out on Disney Plus after Infinity, after the Infinity Saga had wrapped up. And so they had a couple of straight up bombs. They've had, and just saying, because the wife is here, just a second. All right, so where was I? Oh yeah, after the Infinity Saga was over, we saw stuff like the Eternals, which was incredibly flat. We had series that just didn't really go anywhere in some cases. And so people were just getting very frustrated with the Marvel brand to the point where now a lot of people have checked out on Marvel. And I've been one of the few people that still says, "Hey, I have in Kevin Feige we trust. Hopefully, they will turn this ship around." Now, it's really more hope than faith, but I just want to, Marvel has always been a big part of my life because I've been collecting Marvel comics since I was a little guy, and I would hate to see the Marvel movie empire just collapse because they made some screw ups after Endgame. Now, what happened was they shot all of Daredevil Born Again, and then Kevin Feige started this whole new direction where they were going to focus in hardcore on the quality of their material rather than the quantity. And one of the things they did was obviously they shelved a lot of stuff, and with Daredevil they actually reshot pretty much the entire series. And in fact, in this trailer, there is a character who appears that was not originally going to be in the series because of scheduling conflicts. But then when they started reshooting, well, her schedule freed up, and so they were able to bring her in. And that's I can't remember the actress's name, but it's a woman that plays Kingpin's wife from the original Netflix series. So she's back. We also, but that's ultimately a good thing. And this is the first real look, because I haven't seen any of the leaked footage that came out of Comic-Con or anything. I didn't see any of it. I wasn't looking for it because I'm not really interested in piracy. So we'll see what they have here. And honestly, from the quick glimpse of the trailer that I had earlier, it looks pretty darn good. And so I figure we'll talk about it right here, right now. And so starting out, we see a dark room. Now, one thing I did not know much about, and that is the villain of this season. The villain's name is Muse. And I had to do a little bit of research on this. Apparently, Muse is an artist and also a complete psycho. And so it would appear that this fight is taking place at Muse's lair, because if you look carefully, you can see cans of paint, you can see sketches, you can see paintbrushes. So this is clearly like an artist's studio. And so this opening fight sequence that we see here, I'm guessing takes place in Muse's evil lair or whatever. So let's see, go back to, what are you doing? Hold on now. Stupid thing wants to be stupid. All right, so you play.
Thank you for finding the time.
So obviously they're doing like these little quick cuts, typical trailer style kind of thing. But I think it's interesting. So we're seeing him fighting Muse, and then also intercutting it with him having a civil conversation with Kingpin, which, something that actually did happen a couple of times in the old Netflix days. And so because, they're both very intelligent people, and they would spar intellectually as much as they would physically.
I will admit, it's not entirely unpleasant seeing you again.
I love that line, just because, honestly, it's clear that's kind of to me at least, it seems like it's kind of a pseudo fourth wall break where what he's really saying is it's great to be back, and we're finally getting Daredevil season 4 basically. And if you look carefully, and this is at this shot right here, it looks like you can see that they could not find a sponsor for hot sauce, Worcestershire sauce, or ketchup, because all the bottles are in such a way that you cannot, well, maybe the Worcestershire sauce, because you can see the A1, but it's not turned directly at the camera, so I kind of doubt it. But the hot sauce, the Tabasco sauce there is turned away from the camera, and the ketchup is perfectly made so you cannot see the label. But the other thing is that you can see on Kingpin's hand is a wedding ring. And remember, I told you the bride, Kingpin, is in this series. And he's still twitching his fingers, which is something that he did a lot in the original.
A lot of time has passed. By the look of it, you've...
All right, so notice we have, here's your confirmation for anybody that was wondering. Yes, Karen Page is back. Yes, Foggy Nelson is back, although it looks like Foggy is looking a whole lot better than he did back in the day. So good for him. But obviously they are in the series. At least, hopefully, I hope it's not like a Carrie-Anne Moss situation like from The Acolyte, where they're only in like, a few scenes, but because I did really like both those characters.
come up in the world.
I could say the same about you.
So Kingpin says to Murdoch he's really come up in the world, and Murdoch says the same back at Kingpin. Now, I know that this season revolves around and this happened in the comic books, that Kingpin became the mayor of New York. And so, since it revolves around that, that's probably what Murdoch is referring to. As far as Murdoch coming up in the world, I'm thinking maybe just he's a more successful lawyer, because keep in mind that the only appearance of Daredevil that we've had since season 3 of the Daredevil Netflix series was She-Hulk, but the ending of She-Hulk kind of implies that that series is probably not going to be considered canonical. Yeah, so here we see, it looks like Kingpin being elected, and all the crowds are celebrating. Oh no, it's a New Year's celebration. So it says Happy New Year there. So it's just, but Kingpin's obviously addressing the city in some way. Now, just looking around at this shot, and a couple of fun things here. If you notice, look on the left-hand side, you can see a poster for the Rogers Broadway musical, which of course was a part of the Hawkeye series. And it looks like they did get a sponsorship from Price Lock, good for them, and Levi's, good, so they got some money there. And then, and it looks like the blue sign above Kingpin on the far right is Pim Van Dyne, which is, of course, Hope's. Remember, Hope took over the PIM Corporation in Quantum Mania. If you haven't seen it, that's a thing.
Serves his city. I can see you're not entirely convinced.
So the mayor serves the city. I'd say you're not entirely convinced. I'm sure that's an understatement.
Can you blame me? I can't shake the feeling that you're gaming the system.
Why did you stop being a vigilante?
Okay, so a couple of things here. First of all, it's kind of interesting how they're being so brutally honest with each other. And notice Kingpin straight up says, "Why did you stop being a vigilante?" So Daredevil is retired at this point. So whether Daredevil retired, and hopefully the series will clarify it, because we don't know, like, did he retire before the events of She-Hulk or after the events of She-Hulk? And so if before, then we can officially say She-Hulk is probably not considered canonical. If, or at least She-Hulk takes place in some other universe in the Marvel multiverse. If after, then, well, who knows?
The line was crossed.
A line was crossed, and this is, and notice I grabbed this for the thumbnail if you didn't notice it. And so he quit being Daredevil because notice he didn't say I crossed a line. He said a line was crossed. And so was it someone he knew? Maybe something that Punisher did, or something that Foggy or Karen did, or I don't know. So that I think will be interesting to see played out.
It's hard to come to terms with a violent nature. Hating the power it has over us.
And by the way, that if you saw that was the official release date is March 4th. So I don't know about you guys, but so far I'm very much looking forward to March 4th.
The city can't go unchecked.
And wait a second, let me go back. I thought, let me go back just a little bit more.
Unchecked.
Thought I saw. Let me go.
The city can't go on.
Okay, that was in the prison garb. That was I think that was Bullseye from season 3.
Checked.
The devil's work is never done.
Sometimes peace needs to be broken. Chaos.
It looks like he's got a new girlfriend, and there's that's the lady that played Kingpin's love interest in the original Netflix series, and obviously you see and there you go. There's Punisher.
Am I putting the hatchet down?
Whoa. So I guess Punisher and Daredevil aren't getting along that well.
I was raised to believe in grace.
And that is a vigilante called White Tiger. I don't know much about White Tiger. A little after my time collecting Marvel. Or at least, well, I don't have any comics with White. Maybe White Tiger's been around forever. I don't know, but the name doesn't sound familiar. I just knew that there was a character called White Tiger in it, and that's what that character looks like.
I was also raised.
So, Now, both Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio in interviews have said that this season of Daredevil, because people were asking if Disney was willing to go as far with the violence as they did in the Netflix shows, and both of them said that this season is more violent than the Netflix show. And based on those little clips, I'm beginning to think that they weren't lying.
To believe in retribution.
And there we got an assortment of Daredevil cowls. Now, I know that all of these have appeared in the comics over time. Obviously, the yellow one was in She-Hulk, but it was also the original Daredevil cowl from the comics. Daredevil dressed in white for a while, obviously classic red, and he did dress in black for a while. And then looks like there's a second red one, probably to signify this new chapter in his life. Ooh, ow, ooh. Okay, so yeah, this show looks like this show looks like it's going to be brutal. So yeah, March 4th. Yeah, typical Disney stuff. So there we go. We have Daredevil Born Again, the official trailer. Whoops. No, we don't want to remove it. We want to... Come on. Let me go to... Where is it? There. And I just figure I'd go right here because that's a nice spot to have on the screen while we're talking. All right, so there you go. There's Daredevil Born Again, the trailer. And now I'll read whatever you guys got in the chat, and then we'll wrap it up here. Stan Lee says, I still say they should have taken a hiatus after Endgame. Well, look, I'll say this. I think that in hindsight, sure. But that's just because all the stuff after Endgame went downhill. Had they maintained the same level of quality they had leading up to Endgame, then nobody would be saying that. I think that's just it's hindsight is 2020. We didn't know they were going to make a bunch of not so great movies. Regroup, recast it when they needed to, and come up with a new 10-year plan, and it would have been perfect with the 2-year COVID delay. Yeah, well, they didn't know about the 2-year COVID delay when Endgame came out. And fans would have been hyped, anticipating new Marvel instead of a glut of average to below average streaming filler. But you see, okay. You kind of, the problem, again, was not that they didn't take a break. And it's, in fact, it's something that, remember when Solo didn't do so well at the box office, and someone made I can't remember who it was, it might have been Kathleen Kennedy, but it was somebody over at Lucasfilm, made the comment that there was just Star Wars fatigue because of all the recent films. And I said this back then, and I would repeat it now in talking about the Marvel situation. I don't think that there's fatigue of superhero movies. I don't think there's fatigue of Star Wars films. I don't believe in fatigue. What I believe in, as far as that, I don't believe that, oh no, nobody ever wants to see a Star Wars movie right now. Nobody wants to see a superhero movie right now. People just don't want to see crap. And that's what generates because here's what happens is that, and this is where Marvel's going to have to work to regain the public trust. And I'm not going to, put on rose-tinted glasses here. I understand Marvel's got an uphill battle because they have released mediocre content ever since Endgame. with just a couple of exceptions, right? Spider-Man was great, and Deadpool and Wolverine was great, but most of the stuff in between those, not so much, right? There was some good stuff, but honestly, everybody got the feeling that Marvel's heyday was over. And the reason they got that feeling was not because they had fatigue of superhero movies. It's because Marvel kept releasing mediocre films. It seemed like, for whatever reason, everybody at Marvel just suddenly forgot how to make a great movie. So what Marvel has to do, and if this trailer is any kind of indication, I think they're on the right track. They need to basically work on rebuilding the public trust. So, hypothetically, let's say, because, Captain America comes out next month. Let's say Captain America is great, all right? And then we get Daredevil Born Again, and it's awesome. And then we get the Thunderbolts, and it's awesome. And then we get Fantastic Four, and it's awesome. Now, chances are, if I were a bet man, I would say that there's slim to no chance of Captain America or Thunderbolts breaking $1 billion at the box office. I don't think it's going to happen. And because their trust is broken. But if the word of mouth from Captain America gets out, and then the word of mouth on Daredevil gets out, and then the word of mouth on the Thunderbolts gets out, then maybe by Fantastic Four, they might be able to get $1 billion hit again. We'll see. It might take them a few years. But what they need to do is continue to focus on the quality of their content, not the quantity. Stan says, don't think they need anything to keep fans interested. Would have been better to release nothing and build anticipation. They could have started over, but this time with X-Men and Fantastic Four. Well, I get what you're saying, but the last thing I want is for them to reboot the whole freaking Marvel universe. And they're already talking, at least the rumor mill is that the Secret Wars is going to end up being a soft reboot as it is, which I'm not thrilled about. Because I don't want them to recast everybody. I don't want, I think that it's fine. Honestly, let Iron Man just be dead. There are plenty more characters in the Marvel comic book universe to where you don't have to bring back another Iron Man. You don't have to, bring in another Hulk when, I'm forgetting his name, but Mark Ruffalo when he decides to retire. You don't have to bring in another Thor when Chris Hemsworth retires, right? Because there's a million reasons they could be, you can kill the characters off, or they could, like with Thor, he could just be like, well, I'm off to go into the cosmos to explore the universe or whatever, and then we just never see him again, right? So there's a million ways you can write them out of the MCU. It's a big universe. You don't need to have everybody appear in every film. So I don't want reboots, and I certainly don't want there to be, okay, now there's the Marvel Avengers universe, the Marvel Fantastic Four universe, the Marvel X-Men universe, because then we just get the same thing we had before, except that one studio is making all the movies. And that's just, to me, stupid. I want to see I like the idea of a interconnected universe, but not every movie has to be about everybody else. Since they also just bought Fox back then, yes. Is he still suffering from the Echo curse thing? As far as Kingpin, don't know. I'm sure that they'll bring that up. The Rossonati said the thumbnail had me rolling. Oh, you like that image? Yeah. You can, LDG, I think, originally made the image. And then Darren tried to use it to make fun of me a few times. And so I've just decided, yeah, that's going to be my avatar now. And is Herman Schmeckelbeck back? No. Herman Schmeckelbeck was completely evaporated from all existence. And where does Echo fit in the timeline? Well, if you're asking like as far as when it takes place, I don't know. They're going to probably have to address that in Born Again. Because obviously Echo and Kingpin had a serious confrontation there. But we also don't fully know what Kingpin's motives are here. It's entirely possible that Kingpin is genuinely trying to be a good mayor. Because remember, Kingpin is not the villain of this season. Muse is. And in fact, one of the things they've said in the, early releases on, as far as blurbs about what it's about, is that Kingpin and Daredevil have to put their differences aside in order to deal with the Muse situation. Now, remember, that conversation at the diner was kind of interesting because, Kingpin said it's not entirely bad to see you, and I get the feeling that you don't believe me. And Daredevil's like, well, can you blame me? And so maybe Kingpin is being genuine, or maybe he starts out as being genuine and starts to deteriorate over time. Like maybe the Echo curse isn't permanent, or whatever you want to call that. Let's see. Hey, done bathing and stuff, leaving for work in 15, saw you were streaming in. Yeah, Creep, just talking about the Daredevil Born Again trailer. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It looks pretty good. I thought that you were watching Genesis 2 without me. Not watching it just yet. Don't worry. You'll know when I do. And in fact, Creep, I was going to tell you, so as far as watching it, I will make sure that I purchase the movie and have it ready, but I'm not going to do the actual review until after the fast because that's not necessary. Okay, so if that's okay with you, if you absolutely can't wait that long, tell me now, and I'll try to start working on it this week. But I would prefer to not watch garbage like that during the fast. And that's assuming you can even hear me because. And you said hi and bye, nerd, so you might not even be here. White Tiger from Rumble in the Bronx. No, I don't believe so. And he wasn't always blind, so he might have favorite colors. Oh, as far as the different masks sitting there, yeah. That's kind of funny because I never thought about that. Since Daredevil is blind, and by all accounts, as far as I know, he can't sense color at all. So, like, if he is scanning a room using his hyper senses, he might be able to tell. Like, he can see texture to the point where he could tell if there was a painting on the wall, and he could see the brushstrokes. But the paint would all be the same color as the canvas, which would be the same color as, and actually, if there was glass over the paint, then he wouldn't even be able to see that, but he can only see whatever is on the surface of everything, but he can only see the exact shape. He can tell the texture down to a very fine point, but he can't see color. So why would he have a yellow helmet, a white helmet, a black helmet, and a red helmet? I don't know. It's possible that he thinks they're all red, and his costumer is just like pulling jokes on it. Like his next one's going to be pink. Like they should have a scene where he puts on the yellow one, and have Foggy say something like, "Oh, why are you putting the black one on?" Let's see. Malfeast in the house says, Muse is a pretty messed up villain. Wonder how far they're willing to go with him. He has done some really effed up stuff in the comics. Well, based on what they show in the trailer, I doubt there's much that they might not, and again, I don't know what Muse has done, but let's say Muse has forced himself upon a person, right? Sexually. I doubt they would show that in graphic detail, but I wouldn't hold it past them to have that in there. Like, let's say he did that to Karen Page. I could see them putting that in the show. I just would be surprised if they did it in extremely explicit detail, because it does seem like Disney does have certain limits that it won't go past. Like if you look at Deadpool in on Disney Plus, it's kind of funny, and I wouldn't have noticed if it wasn't for the fact that someone on YouTube mentioned it, and now I can't not notice it. Is that if you have a copy of it from another source, like I have the first two Deadpool films over on Vudu, or now it's Fandango, whatever. And if you watch the stripper club scene in the original, you can see full frontal nudity of the strippers. In the Disney Plus cut, they cut out the lower portion, if you will, of the strippers. And so it seems like there are certain lines that Disney still won't cross. Obviously, dropping the F-bomb is not one of those things. And if I remember correct, I'm trying to remember if they cut out the baby penis from Deadpool 2. I don't remember. I'll have to go back and look. I'm not going to look during the fast, but yeah, it's one of those things. And if they took a hiatus, they'd have time to decide on a new path. I don't think they needed time. You know, they knew what they wanted to do, because they wanted to do, the next thing was going to be a multiverse thing, and it was going to lead up to Kang the Conqueror. That was going to be their next 10-year plan. And remember, the Doomsday was originally going to be Kang Dynasty. And so all that was going to lead up to this. It's just that the path was a mess. They knew where they wanted to end up. They just didn't know how to get there. And I don't know why they suddenly fell apart, except that, and I believe what Feige said. I think that they were focused too much on getting as much content out as they could rather than the quality of said content. Because notice, like, they were trying to put out 3 movies a year plus half a dozen streaming shows, and they were talking about all this stuff and it was just way too much. And you can't maintain quality on a relatively small studio putting out that kind of production. The problem is they didn't take a break. Everyone was winning, so everything was winning, so they got lazy. I will agree they got lazy, but you know what? I think they would have been. The problem is if they waited 10 years, I think they'd still be lazy. And Philip, thanks you so much with a 50. I assume that's like 50 pesos, 50 Mexican, and says, so with me just arriving, just wanted to say, no, Marvel is dead. Superheroes in general are dead. They have nothing of substance to give anymore. Well, I gotta say, Philip, you should check out the Deadpool trailer. You might want to eat those words. And again, I understand that a lot of people feel really burnt on it, and because of the bad content. But it's just like people that say, oh, Star Trek is dead. Oh, Star Wars is dead. But then they might come out with something good, and all of a sudden people will say, well, it's almost dead. And then if they come out with something else that's good, they'll be like, oh, maybe it might be on the right track. And so they can rebuild. It's just a matter of will they, Anyway, but what I was going to say to you, Stan, is that they did get lazy. But you know what? I think if they had taken a 10-year break, they would have come back lazy. So at least they had an opportunity to learn their lesson. The question is, can they rebuild? And that's going to be an uphill battle, like I said. And their hubris caused them to consider their failures as flukes. Well, the first couple, I would have agreed with you. And the thing is, they had a couple of success stories in there. I don't think all the movies over the last few years have been bad. I don't think all the shows in the last few years have been bad. But I do think that the quality definitely deteriorated, and I think that they see that. The fans are fatigued of bullcrap, and all these studios bullcrap. Well, I'll say this, youngster. Yeah, I think that fans don't want bad. They don't want bad movies. They don't want bad shows. It's that simple. I don't think the fans generally like you got the hardcore like most of us here, and then you have the softcore fans, and then you have the normies, right? And I don't think that anybody but the hardcore really gives a crap about what the studios are doing. Most people don't think about Disney and how much they hate Disney and everything Disney is bad. That's something that you see on YouTube where everybody is an activist about something. But I do not believe for a minute that most people really give a crap about what studio something comes from. Stan says if they'd taken more time to work on another 10-year plan instead of random, poorly planned projects, they might have had better results. Well, again, they weren't random; they were just bad. They had an idea of where they wanted to go. They just executed very poorly. And what about getting Mr. Know-It-All to watch it too? I don't know if he'll be able to. I'll ask him, but I can't promise you guys anything. Yeah, like Stevie Wonder's real estate agent always made a fortune by telling him they just bought him a penthouse, except it was actually a basement. See, that would be hilarious. If he's doing enough drugs, he can smell colors. Well, okay, that might be true. Stan says, true enough, but maybe if they had taken some time, they would have realized Kang was just a bad plan. Well, here's the thing. Kang is not my favorite villain, not by a long shot. But Kang could have been a great way to usher in the Fantastic Four, because remember, Kang, while he is from, ultimately, the original idea of Kang, he's from the future, and it turned out later that we find out that he's Reed Richards' descendant. And so that could actually be kind of interesting. But, they just, yeah, I don't think picking Kang was the problem. Now, Jonathan Majors and his problems that he ran into with his ex didn't help. And, because they quickly had to, cancel Kang and come up with something else. Now, I think that, but people like me have been screaming for Doctor Doom from day one. As soon as they said the next big bad was going to be Kang, I was going to, I was upset because I didn't want Kang. I wanted Doctor Doom. So I'm hoping, and the rumor mill is that Robert Downey Jr. is just playing a variant of Doctor Doom from a specific place where, and this did happen in the comics, where Doom and Richards, or Doom and Tony Stark swap bodies. Mike Richards says, no baby penises during the fast. Yes, that is an accurate quote. Anyway, what have you were telling me? Huh? Was asked to walk away because of a late Christmas gift. Didn't hear what you wanted to tell me. I wanted to tell you something? I don't remember. We don't have superhero fatigue. We have crap fatigue. I agree. And that's been the problem with Star Wars. That's been and the funny thing is, it's that Disney, it's kind of funny. I think that people blame Disney, right? Disney Star Wars, Disney Marvel, and all that. Except that, A, they don't stop to think about most of Marvel, including most of the Infinity Wars movies, not just Infinity Wars, but all the movies leading up to Infinity Wars, were Disney productions. Secondly, Star Wars, or Lucasfilm, was already going to be taken over by Kathleen Kennedy. She was handpicked by George Lucas to take over the studio. He was already planning to retire. He was going to sell out to somebody. Disney just happened to be the ones to buy it. And the third thing about this is that Disney has always had a pretty standard modus operandi here. Is what Disney has been doing for some time now is acquiring IPs and IP development companies and letting them do their thing. Disney, one of the earlier ones was Pixar, right? So Disney didn't suddenly go into Pixar and say, here's how you got to make all your movies. They just said, hey, Pixar, keep making great movies. and we'll bankroll you, you know. And so and they did the same thing with Marvel. They did the same thing with Lucasfilm, and you know they've had other studios that they own. I mean, Disney owns a ton of studios. A lot of people don't realize how many studios Disney actually owns. But and for the most part, they just tell them to make their thing. Notice when you go to an MCU film, you don't see the Disney logo, you see the MCU logo. And so most people don't even realize when they're watching a Disney movie. And so people were saying, oh, it's Disney, Disney, Disney. No, it just happens to be that Marvel and Lucasfilm, Lucasfilm actually went downhill first. And because Lucasfilm, honestly, while George Lucas is not a great filmmaker, he really isn't, but he is a good studio head, which we learned. He's a better studio head than Kathleen Kennedy, that's for sure. And so I think that the Marvel problem was, you know, I think that would have happened regardless of whether Disney bought Marvel. I think that was just unfortunate for Disney that both happened at the same time. Let's see. The problem with superheroes is that superheroes are 80% crap and 20% random success. I disagree. But, you know, I understand if you don't like superheroes, that's fine. But, you know, I happen to love superheroes. Daniel says, is Elektra a thing in Daredevil universe, or is that just Jennifer Garner? And thank you, Philip, with another 50. Do you still call them pesos? I don't know, because it just says Mexican
Disney
$50.
did try to replace their princess lineup with a new generation of teenage heroes in Marvel's and Star Wars.
See, I can hear the weird voice. I don't know if you guys can hear the weird voice, but I can definitely hear the weird voice. But anyway, is Elektra a thing in the Daredevil universe? Yes. Elektra has always, she was, in fact, Elektra's death was a big deal back in, I think it was the late 70s, early 80s. So Disney did try to replace their princess lineup with a new generation of teenage heroes in Marvel's and Star Wars. I don't know. I think the Disney princess will always be a thing. I think they were just planning on adding to the Disney princesses with like Rey and maybe Captain Marvel and stuff like that, and just, you know, making them the next Disney princesses, but they still have the Disney princesses. I do think that Disney proper is struggling to come up with any good ideas these days, and I don't know why. There's still plenty of fairy tales left to be adapted into major animated features, but hey, whatever. Wish they picked Mads Mikkelsen to play Doctor Doom. Said he is a better fit for the character. I think Mads would have been good for Doctor Doom, but honestly, I wanted a Eastern European Doctor Doom. Now, rumor again is, and this is still just rumor, but rumor has it, like I said, that this Doom that played by Robert Downey Jr. is just a kind of a placeholder Doom. That this is Doom from a universe where Doom and Tony Stark swap bodies, but there's still the real Victor Von Doom somewhere hiding in the wings that we haven't seen yet. And I still hope that they cast an Eastern European. Let's see. I used to like superheroes. I learned to hate them. I understand, Philip, but I still love superheroes, and maybe it's just because I love them longer than you. I don't know, because I've loved superheroes all the way back to the mid '70s when I bought my first Marvel comic book, which was a Fantastic Four comic book, actually. And I wonder, you know, I could actually look up what year that was. Let's see if I can find. Okay. Oh, come on. What do you mean the site cannot be reached? I saw the cover, but then it wouldn't let me. Okay, so. So 1977. And it was Fantastic Four number 184, where the Fantastic Four fought the Eliminator. In case anybody cares. Is American Graffiti his second best movie? No. American Graffiti sucks. Well, the problem is that George Lucas, calling him any movie his second best, I mean, I would say George Lucas's best movie, I think he directed, let me double check. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I know that. Right. No, it wasn't. Okay, dang, it was just produced by him. I was thinking of Red Tails, but I didn't know if he had if he had actually directed it or just produced it. So I would have to say, as far as trying to rank movies that George Lucas personally directed, let me see if I can find that list on IMDb. Let's see, George Lucas, and then writer, don't care about writer, director. All right, so Star Wars, Cinema 16, American Short Films, never heard of it. Star Wars Episode 3, Star Wars Episode 2, Star Wars Episode 2, The Saga Continues, a video. Star Wars Episode 1, then Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. American Graffiti, Bald, The Making of THX 1138, I forgot about that one. Filmmaker is a short, The Emperor is a short. Anyone lived in a pretty how town, which is another short. 161867, another short. Electronic Labyrinth, another short. Herbie, another short. Fahrenheit, another short. 14208, which is another short. And Look at Life, another short. So the only feature films that he directed were THX 1138, American Graffiti, and then Star Wars, which was later retitled Star Wars Episode 4, and then Star Wars Episode 1, 2, and 3. That is his entire directorial career. So of those, man, trying to rate them as well directed, I would have to say his best film was probably THX 1138. But even that was not particularly well directed. He's just not a good director. Stan says, I hear it's that time on Nerd Fights. Not sure what you mean by that. Robert says, hello there. Good to see you, Salty. Good to see you, Robert. Philip says, well, that's because Disney is not run by artists, but people cashing in investor money by pretending they know what they're doing. Well, that's the problem with Disney proper. I agree. But those same people, like the type of people that are running Disney are the geniuses that thought, hey, we should buy Pixar and Marvel Studios when Marvel Studios was small, and Lucasfilm. Those were all smart purchases, even though Lucasfilm ended up, being a big, crap hole. But now it seems like Star Wars has been struggling to come back over the, especially on Disney Plus. They just haven't made a good movie since Kathleen Kennedy took over. But we'll see what happens. Robert says, Sidetracker, though, how about some superhero shows or movies besides Marvel or DC? There's some Image comics or Max movie would be nice. There have been plenty of independent comics turned into movies. Most of them don't do well. Heck, Kick-Ass, right? But then Kick-Ass 2 was a complete failure, both as a film and at the box office. You have, Scott Pilgrim versus the World. You have all sorts of stuff that, Spawn was, obviously an independent film or independent comic. But the thing is that Marvel and DC, those are the iconic characters. Now, I understand, a lot of people like the indie stuff. I tend not to, and I'll tell you the honest reason is that, and this is an unfortunate trend we're getting in Marvel right now, is that they're too graphic. I prefer. Look, Daredevil is the exception that proves the rule. Like for me, certain characters should be graphic, right? Daredevil is one of them. Wolverine is one of them, and then Batman is one of them. But most superheroes should be heroic, right? They should all be striving to be more like Superman or Spider-Man. They shouldn't be down and dirty and doing horrible things and ultra violence and lots of nudity and all that. That's not what's, you ruin superheroes if you make the entire genre like that. That's what has me really worried about the Thunderbolts, is that the Thunderbolts looks like they're trying to be like the Suicide Squad. Now, granted, I know that the Thunderbolts and the Suicide Squad really don't have that much in common, but it's the flavor it seems like they're trying to give it. And I don't want that. I don't want, like even in the trailer for the Thunderbolts where they say, that people have the mistaken idea that there are good guys and bad guys, but there's just bad guys and even worse guys. I hate that kind of logic. I hate that kind of thinking. It's at best, it's just depressing, and at worst, it's just straight up nihilism, and I don't like that. Instead, heroes are supposed to stand for truth and justice, and in Superman's case, the American way. But even if it's not and the American way, it's still supposed to be truth, justice, righteousness, goodness for goodness sake, not just freaking, today I had to kill someone. I don't want to see PTSD of Nam stories out of my superheroes. Let's see. Stanley says Red Tails was terrible. I actually didn't hate Red Tails. I didn't think it was the best movie, but I didn't think it was horrible. Philip says, that's Hollywood in general. It's dying because business machine got way too big and eat the souls, the art of telling stories in their quest for content. But you see, I understand what you're saying. I agree to a point, but I disagree. The problem is the artists that you're talking about aren't any better than, because, it's so funny because people say, oh, all this woke content because of these horrible studios and stuff. Studios don't give a crap about woke. They don't. The studios, they want to make money, and what they're told is that, oh, that's what's going to sell is woke. Why? Because they get all their information from major, liberal markets like Los Angeles. They think they think that people in Los Angeles are normal, everyday Americans. They don't realize that this country is not just a whole bunch of crazy left-wingers. And so that's why they get generally stupefied by the fact that, they'll make some movie where the only good thing you can say about the movie is that there are no white men about it. And that's saying a good thing about the movie? What? No, that's not a good thing or a bad thing. That's just talking about the demographics of the actors. That's completely superficial by definition. And yet that's what Hollywood runs on. And the thing is that who drives this? The studio execs? No, the actors, the directors, the artists. They think that that's the way to be. Talk to them. Well, I know we can't talk to them, but if you listen to them, the most radically left-leaning people in Hollywood are not the studio execs. It's the people giving themselves Oscars because of how awesome they think they are. THX was basically a big budget remake of a student film. Yeah, that's literally true. American Graffiti was better than Red Tails. Agree to disagree on that. But then again, American Graffiti just never grabbed me. It didn't interest me. So there's that. So it's got a bad director and a story I don't care about. Maybe I just have rose-colored glasses. Should rewatch American Graffiti. Remember, it's sort of a 50s version of Dazed and Confused. Let's face it, we'll probably never get another Spawn movie anytime soon. Yeah, which is too bad. I'd like to see Spawn done well. But the best you can hope for at this point is that they try to do Venom justice whenever they reboot him. He made a fortune licensing THX Star Wars sound. Industrial Light and Magic is his too, right? Yeah, ILM. Well, THX, yes, and the number one sound studio in the world is still Skywalker Sound. You look at the end of most movies, you'll see remixed at Skywalker Sound. We don't talk about Howard the Duck. Yeah. And Stanley yells, Punisher! Yeah, Punisher should be dark and graphic, but Punisher's kind of part, especially in the live action zone now. He's part of the Daredevil verse, if you will. I don't have a problem with the Daredevil corner of the MCU being dark and gritty. But what I'm worried about is that Marvel's like, oh, that's the way to go, and they start making everything dark and gritty. That's my biggest fear, because that's what happened in the comic books, and that's why I stopped collecting comic books in the early 90s, is because I was sick of everything going darker and darker and darker. It all started in 1986 with the Dark Knight Returns. So you're saying they're not supposed to go for the head? No, I'm saying that, that was, okay, so think about this. In Infinity War, when Stormbreaker was sticking out of Thanos' chest, that was the most graphic thing we had ever seen in a Marvel movie, right? And to me, as far as the mainstream Marvel characters, that's as far as it should ever go. Now, we saw stuff worse than that in the Daredevil Born Again trailer, with people's arms being bent backwards and, stabbed in the eye and all that, because it looked more real and so more visceral. But I don't want to see Marvel just go dark, dark, dark. I really, really don't. That's my biggest fear right now. The issue is also superhero culture is super narcissistic. Look at the history of comic books. Most sources skip everything that came before Superman. You Grant Morrison's Super God. Try looking for the history of comic books. Most sources skip everything that came before Superman. Well, Superman was the first big mainstream superhero, but I understand that he wasn't the first superhero, but at the same time, Superman is what made the genre. Overnight, Superman became the most popular comic book and just completely dominated with Action Comics. It's 444 pages of Grant Morrison pretending superhuman is the greatest thing that happened in the history of humanity. Okay. Oh, pretending Superman is the greatest thing that happened in the history of humanity. Well, Grant Morrison, what do you expect? Let's see. Yeah, even at the end of Skeleton Crew, they had to cram in a sob story for Jude Law. Yeah. Don't get me started about that. I'll wait until I get Mr. Know-It-All in here, hopefully, assuming he's coming back, before I start talking about Skeleton Crew, because I want someone to actually fight with. Also, I don't believe in wokeness. I believe is business turning cultural myths into McDonald's hamburgers. Right, but the thing is that like the what most people say has ruined films in recent years is the wokeness, and a lot of people think that it's the studio executives that wanted that, but honestly, that's not it. And as far as turning cultural myths into McDonald's hamburgers, you know who you can blame for that? Star Trek. Look it up. First Happy Meal movie promotion was Star Trek: The Motion Picture. So, you want to blame somebody, don't blame superheroes, blame Star Trek. And not just that, you got to blame the OG Star Trek. Let's see, but you have a good point with artists just wanting to pat themselves on the back. Well, that's pretty much all. They constantly, they think that they're all geniuses because they're good at playing pretend. There are other movies that are based on comics, The Crow, Tank Girl, even Tom Cruise movie, Edge of Tomorrow. Yeah, well, technically that's a manga, which is a Japanese comic, but yes. Sorry, man, Skywalker sound, not Star Wars. Yeah, I get it. Even Tough Punisher started in the Spider-Verse. Robert says, a proper based on anime live action Dragon Ball movie could be a good. It might be. I never got into Dragon Ball, so I could not give you a good, honest opinion on that because I'm not into anime that much. There's a couple of animes that I like, but only a couple. My point is, Superman was just a 6-page story in a magazine that had multiple stories with the theme of action, not superheroes. But Superman immediately, I'm not arguing with you on that. I don't know that for a fact, but I'll take your word for it. But even if that's true, Superman immediately became a cultural phenomenon, dude. Superman took America by storm. Let's see. I'm just trying to see. So, Action Comics #1, June 1938's first issue, the original run of the comic books, Action Comics, first appearance of several comic book heroes, most notably Superman. Sold for 10 cents. Let's see. Superman was on page 1 through 13. Then I had Chuck Dawson, page 14 through 19. Zateria. Oh, I didn't know she was that old. Came page 20 through 31. South Sea Strategy, page 32 through 33. That's only a 2-pager. Sticky Matt Simpson, page 34 through 37. The Adventures of Marco Polo, 38 through 41. Pep Morgan, 42 through 45. Scoops Gagnon and the 5-Star Reporter, 46 through 51. Tex Thompson, 52 through 63. Stardust, page 64. And Odds and Ends Inside Back Cover. So it was actually technically 13 pages, but I don't know if any of that was ads or not. That being said, Superman was on the cover and became a huge phenomenon. Let's see. Detective Comics was a magazine of detective stories in general. Yeah, until issue number 27, which is when Batman first appeared. The oldest superhero I've ever heard of is the Ogon Bat, Golden Bat. He came out in 1931 and has similar powers to Superman. Never heard of that one. Deadpool and Wolverine brought me back to Marvel again. Deadpool and Wolverine was a lot of fun. Let's see. Edge of Tomorrow was the best video game movie that wasn't really a video game movie. I liked Edge of Tomorrow, although it has the worst name in the history of Tom Cruise, which is probably why it didn't do that well for a Tom Cruise film. Yeah, but for the reason the manga does it better than the American comic book industry overtaken by superheroes, didn't allow for any other gender. Wait. Yes, but for the reason manga does better than American comic book industry overtaken by superheroes and didn't allow for any other gender just take a look over. They just like they took over theaters for a while. I don't think that anime ever took over theaters. Or manga adaptations, I don't think ever has dominated cinema. Maybe in Japan, but not here. Let's see. Just the player trying the same level over and over again until they figured out the pattern or to speed run it. Yeah, that's true. Didn't even think about it that way. I believe the version of Superman will soon be public domain. Those all the jargon mean the first original version of Superman. Not necessarily, but I don't know, because it depends on, because the way that the way the copyright rights work, it's different based on if it's the original work of an artist versus a corporate owned entity, like the reason that Disney's been fighting to try and maintain copyright over Mickey Mouse is because Mickey Mouse doesn't belong technically to the Walt Disney Corporation. Disney Mouse was the creation of Walt Disney, who died, and copyright is based on the death of the original owner. However, in comic books, it's depending on the individual comic book company, many of them do, like, for example, Stan Lee does not, did, now he's passed away, Stan Lee did not own Spider-Man or any other character that he helped develop. Those all belong to Marvel Comics. And so the only way that Marvel, that any Marvel character goes public domain is if Marvel Comics goes out of business. And so now, as far as Action Comics #1, I don't know if Schuster and Siegel, if their work belonged to them or if it belonged to Action Comics. If it belonged to Action Comics that was then absorbed by Detective Comics and became DC Comics, then Superman will never go into public domain. But I don't know. And I'm not a lawyer, so that's not legal advice. Manga doesn't have a single genre. What I was trying to say is, before my dyslexia took over, was that manga is doing better in the industry of selling comics because it's more flexible. Oh, I see what you're saying. Well, honestly, I think that, people have tried many times, and there's still independent comics out there that, and even like Marvel and DC every now and then come out with something that's not superhero based, that usually fails miserably. In fact, I remember when it first came out, when I was, I think I was in high school at the time, but I have to double check. But it was a comic book series about the war in Vietnam, and it was called The Nam. And I bought the first couple of issues, but honestly, I didn't think it was that good. But I also realized that I like reading comic books for superheroes. Archie comics, been around for a long time, but ultimately sales, nothing. But the thing is that even Marvel and DC, they are not selling comics. That's the funny thing, is that Marvel and DC would probably both be defunct companies right now, if not for the movie industry. Argenbat is a Japanese series. Okay, well, that's probably why I've never heard of it. And he's an ancient Atlantean superhero. The Steamboat Willie version of Mickey Mouse is public domain now. If you say so, I don't know. But because I don't really care. But but what I'm saying is that Mickey Mouse was the creation of Walt Disney, as opposed to the creation of Disney, the corporation. And so even though Walt Disney is the founder of the Disney Corporation, it doesn't work that way. And so, the way that it worked was that, Mickey Mouse was the property of Walt Disney, and, that character. They may now maybe Disney trademarked the later. That might be why it's the Steamboat Willie version, because if Disney then later trademarked an updated version of Mickey Mouse when they redesigned them at some point, and so that would make sense. And that it would be difficult to ever get into the public domain. But quite frankly, I mean, if you want to make fun of Mickey Mouse, you can right now. You've always been able to. I mean, look at South Park. How many times has South Park had evil Mickey Mouse ranting and raving and cussing and killing people and stuff? It's just that you have to do it as parody. You just, all the copyright means is that you can't produce an original work of Mickey Mouse. Well, apparently you can of Steamboat Willie, but let's say you want to make an Iron Man cartoon. You can't make an Iron Man cartoon, have Tony Stark be Iron Man, do the whole thing, and then call it your own original work and sell it. You can't do that. That would be copyright violation. However, if you want to do a parody of Iron Man, then you absolutely can. And, Mad Magazine has been working with that for a very, very long time. The biggest comic book distributor, Diamond, just filed for bankruptcy. That doesn't surprise me because they're not Marvel or DC, so they're not supported by major studios. It's the company that all the comic shops used to have use to order. Oh, yeah, I remember Diamond. Their weekly shipments to the new mainstream comics. Well, that's because comic book stores are a dying industry. I mean, like the comic book store in Murfreesboro that I've been to a few times. I happened to drop off a customer near it today, and I drove past it as I was leaving the parking lot. And it's no longer a comic book store. It's still there under the same name, but now it says comics and games and collectibles, and it's because they can't make a living just selling comics. The publishers didn't use to ship directly to stores. The Diamond distributor brought them in bulk. I actually remember filling out. I used to have a pull list at my local comic book store when I was a kid. You can't do Batman. You can do Baseball Man. That would be actually really funny. But actually, you could do a Batman that is a guy that holds a baseball bat. And in fact, keep in mind, there's a difference between, let me put it in the chat. There's a difference between these two characters. So if you look at the two names that I just put in the chat back to back, there, so if, and notice like Spider-Man has the hyphen between Spider and Man. So if you made a comic book called Spider-Man without the hyphen, that's not the same thing. Yeah, they all survive on statues, tabletop games, Magic, Pokemon cards, those vinyl doll things. Yeah. Because comic books is a dying industry, and it's a dying industry, honestly, because comic book publishers have, the art has gone downhill, the storytelling has gone downhill, and the thing that worries me is when I hear that, even with this Daredevil season 2 trailer, as good as it looks, is that it's based on stuff that's been from recent Daredevil comics. I don't want stuff based on recent comics at all. I think, the reason that Marvel hit their stride the way they did was because those movies felt like Marvel comics from the late 70s, early 80s. And if Marvel wants to continue to succeed, they need to go back to that. The problem there is that people think that's misogynist because most of the characters were white men. Well, that's also most of your audience. So who cares? Did you see the game Mouse Pie for Hire? They use old Disney art style and they use the older Mickey Mouse cartoons. Nope, never heard of it. Owlman is a thing, right? Basically an alternate version of Batman. Yes, but Owlman is from the Watchmen, which, interestingly enough, is a DC comic book. But what happened was, now I'm forgetting his name. Forgive me, anybody that's a big comic book fan. But the guy that wrote Watchmen, he wanted to use the Justice League, and DC was like, no, you're not telling a story like that with the Justice League. And so he just basically made an alternate version of the Justice League. So Dr. Manhattan instead of Superman, and Owlman instead of Batman, and I can't remember what her name was instead of Wonder Woman. That's the one that, has sex with Owlman. And so all those characters they were just basically a rebranding of the Justice League, because Watchmen was originally going to be a one-shot Elseworlds Justice League story. And DC was like, oh, no. When they heard the story pitch, they were like, yeah, that's not happening. You are not gonna do that with our characters. So who's going to buy one of those Tesla robots for $20,000? Well, I don't have $20,000, so it will not be me. And even if I did have $20,000, I don't know what the point in a Tesla robot would be. I'd spend the money on other things first. And if you bought a new book in a while, it's like $4 for a 20 to 30 page comic. Yeah, I know, it's crazy. I haven't bought a book in probably it was pre-COVID, but it was right, when did they cancel Fantastic Four? It was right around then. Let's see, when did they, or not cancel, when did they bring it back? Let's see. That's the movie. I want the comic book. When did Marvel? Let me start for, we'll try comics. Let's see. Fantastic Four ended with issue 611, and it was relaunched in November 2012. So it's been 12 years since I bought a comic book, because the last one I bought was Fantastic Four #1. Just because I wanted to have it, because I had the entire original run of Fantastic Four after issue 25. I do not have the first 25 issues, but everything after that I do have, all the way up to issue 611. The Diamond Monopoly was actually caused by Marvel Comic. It's amazing how many times Marvel single-handedly destroyed the comic book industry multiple times. I don't think Marvel single-handedly destroyed the comic book industry. I think the comic book industry destroyed the comic book industry. Alan Moore, yes, thank you. Let's make Terminator great again. Yeah, we'll see. They need to reboot Terminator. Just stop trying to bring Arnold Schwarzenegger back as a geriatric Terminator. Just reboot the franchise. The thing is, there's really good modern superhero comics. Immortal Hulk was so good, it was uncanny. It managed to get away with telling a 50-issue story without getting screwed by Marvel. Don't know anything about Immortal Hulk, so I can't say if I thought it was good or not. But you can't adapt Immortal Hulk to Disney because Immortal Hulk is an adult horror story. But you see, that's just it, Philip. You're missing the point. Then it's not the frickin' Hulk. It's like that Old Man Logan where Hulk is screwing She-Hulk and they have messed up Hulk babies and stuff. And I mean, I don't own it. I've never read it, but then someone told me about it and I verified that was a real thing. I was like, oh, that's so stupid. It's just, going dark just to go dark is stupid. Hulk is actually not, I mean, yes, the horror of the Hulk is just that Bruce Banner is afraid that he can't control it. But the Hulk is a heroic character. I mean, yeah, he wasn't at the very beginning, but he became a hero. Let him be a frickin' hero. I don't want every character to be dark. I remember when you could buy comic books in convenience stores like 7-Eleven. Oh, yeah, that Fantastic Four comic book I was talking about, the first one that I ever bought, I bought in a Safeway, which is a grocery store. Yeah, I don't want, comic books. That's the whole thing, Philip. And this is where the comic book industry is freaking stupid. All right? If you make comic books that aren't kid friendly, of course they're not going to sell like gangbusters. But now the entire comic book industry is not kid friendly. Heck, we don't even want to call them comics. We want to call them graphic novels because, comics sounds too silly and kiddie. And so we want everything to be adult, but if you make it adult, you're never going to get a new audience. And people say, well, comics had to grow up with their audience. No, they don't. They really don't. Because if you do, when you age the comic books, guess what happens? As your audience starts to die off, your audience just died off. I've heard the latest Transformers and Spider-Man books have been really good. I don't know. Hulk doesn't like relinquishing control. Yeah. I agree. The best of the heroes don't try to kill their enemies. They only do what they must do to stop them. Yeah. But it's more than just that. It's that the themes and stories should be appropriate for a younger audience. So like having Captain Marvel fly around saving rape victims from the patriarchy is, that's not, it's wrong on so many levels. If they did reboot the Terminator, who would you want to play the Terminator? I would find a complete unknown. And I know exactly where I would go to cast him. A little place called Olympic Gym in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. That's where the serious bodybuild. That's where my son works out, and that's where the serious bodybuilders go. And I'd walk in there with my entourage and say, "All right, we're making a new Terminator film. Who wants to audition?" In the McFarlane run, Hulk, and by the way, I would make every Terminator look different, and I would have a bunch of Terminators. So, just so you know, and I'd probably call it like Terminator Wars or something. In the McFarlane run, Hulk would break into a liquor store and try to drink as much as possible, at just the right time, so he'd pass out, and Banner would just sleep all day. See, that's stupid. Now tell me, do you want your 12-year-old to read about how, hey, you know what? If you drink, 5 bottles of Jack Daniels, you'll just sleep all day. And then guess what? Now you got to take your kid to the hospital. A proper Green Lantern movie would also be good. Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing it. And the Nathan Fillion and this Guy Gardner thing has got me cracking up. But yeah, they need to bring in either Jon Stewart or Hal Jordan, or both. It's not about being dark; it's about telling stories with substance. With it, Immortal Hulk was amazing in terms of substance. No, you see, you're missing it again. You don't. What does substance even mean to you? Because telling a dark horror story might be more substantive than telling a story of the Hulk saving the world from the evil, Dr. Mayhem or whatever. But you know what? Hulk versus the evil Dr. Mayhem is a better story for a 12-year-old. And you know what? If you want to read substance, okay, then have them write a novel about it. Because you know what? Kids aren't going to go buy novels. You can go buy the novel about it because you're an adult now and you don't need to look at the pretty pictures in order to read your stories. But if you don't, or you're saying you do need to look at the pretty pictures to read your stories. I know I'm being a little snarky there, but you know what I'm saying, Philip. So if comic books should be marketed to kids. They should still be available pretty much everywhere kids congregate. And they should still be cheap. Part of the reason the comic books, by the way, cost $4 a pop now isn't just because of inflation. That's obviously part of it. But look at the paper stock they're printed on. You know, it's all like this acid-free, wax-coated paper that's, you know, and everything is, you know, the actual materials the stuff is made of is like 10 times more expensive than it needs to be. Comic books were originally called, you know, pulp, because they were made with the cheapest, crappiest paper product there was, which was pulp. And so, and comic books should still be printed on that. And you know what that will also do? It makes collecting comic books a serious thing again. Because you know why nobody takes comic book collecting seriously anymore? It's because now that every comic book is printed with 17 variant covers on indestructible paper, then guess what? If you print 500,000 copies of a comic book today, guess how many copies are still going to be around in 10 years? 500,000. But the reason Action Comics and Detective Comics and the Silver Age Marvel and stuff, the reason that stuff is so valuable is because most of it, just by even sitting in a box in the attic for 20 years, deteriorates because the paper is so cheap and so so vulnerable to the elements. And so you have to take really good care of your comics to keep them in mint condition. And that's why, you know, if you have a Detective Comics number 27 in mint condition, it's worth millions. Let's see. Let's see. Look, I'm telling you, as a kid that grew up with Terminator, Jaws, Aliens, Predator, Jurassic Park, kids like to not be taught. Yeah, but you know what? They are. But if you're going to, here's the problem. None of what you just mentioned is marketed to kids. Right? Now, I understand that some kids will, you know, their parents don't mind taking their kids to an R-rated movie, or their parents have HBO and they don't care if their kids watched it or whatever, right? Which is how people in our generations got to see those things, because we didn't have, you know, the internet back then. However, if a parent wants their kid to have content that is appropriate for their age, you know, because guess what? Back then, back in the days of Terminator, Jaws, Aliens, Predator, Jurassic Park, comic books were at their absolute peak. And the Marvel Infinity Saga is based on comic books from that era. So you can't tell me you can't have it both ways. Yeah, you don't, because guess what? Terminator, Jaws, Aliens, Predator, and Jurassic Park, you know what they all have in common? None of them are superheroes. Well, they did try Green Lantern before Flash. Yeah, well, they sure did. Green Lantern's probably my favorite hero, the one I would want to be if it's possible. Well, Green Lantern is too... That's my problem with DC, and one of the reasons that 90% of my collection is Marvel is DC heroes are too powerful. Can Wolverine get drunk? Probably not. I don't know that it's ever been put to the test, but probably not. I think Idris Elba would be a good fit for Jon Stewart. Oh, yeah, that'd be great. Idris Elba would be great as Jon Stewart. It means to come out of the story feeling like my life has changed, and that gives meaning to my life. Right now, I have the full collection of Calvin and Hobbes. Okay, I'm not sure, you know, because first of all, when I read the Fantastic Four versus the Eliminator, I didn't finish the comic book saying, wow, now my life has meaning. But I was like, wow, I feel like I was taken to a world that was really cool. It was escapism for me, and I really enjoyed it. And so then I was like looking for Fantastic Four everywhere I went. Kids rolled them up and carried them around their back pockets. Yep, because kids didn't know how to take care of nothing. Because Calvin and Hobbes helped rise me into adulthood. And you know who didn't? Garfield. Well, fine. So you like Calvin and Hobbes better than Garfield. But Calvin and Hobbes also, while Calvin and Hobbes was, it's interesting. I mean, I'll say this. Calvin and Hobbes sometimes was funny, sometimes did some serious topics, but was always accessible to kids. They didn't go super dark. You know, it's not like on the Robot Chicken thing where we find out that, you know, Hobbes is really just a stuffed animal and Calvin is insane, right? There's nothing like that in there. Yep, that's why most 90s books are worthless, overprinted, and maybe read them once and then boarded, bagged, and put and stored in the closet. Yeah. So so you're not going to get any value out of that. So you make it out of the cheapest pot. You want it made out of paper that if you leave it out in the sun for more than an hour, it's going to evaporate, because that is what gives you a collectible. Just because you slap the word collectible on it doesn't, you know what's not collectible? Those stupid pop figures. Why? Because they're just boxes of vinyl. Let's see. Robert said, man, you guys are not going to let me finish. Terminator Sarah Connor Chronicles is a great TV show, though Fox canceled it on a cliffhanger, unfortunately, leaving it to Fox to cancel great shows. Well, keep in mind, it might have been a great show, but it didn't get great ratings. So Fox doesn't cancel the show just because it's a great show. Fox cancels shows that don't get good ratings. And say what you want about how Fox did dirty the Firefly, but the show was a Western in space, and quite frankly, them releasing it out of order didn't really, that's not the problem. The problem was that the show was a high concept that people weren't interested in. And so I'm just being honest about it. I liked Firefly, don't get me wrong, but I don't think it's the run order that ruined that show. The show was not that interesting for normies. Well, in Deadpool, they had Logan drinking rubbing alcohol. That's true. Let's see. He has X-Men died because he and his X-Men died because he was at a bar. So I think he drinks enough fast enough he can temporarily catch a buzz. Probably. I have a rare comic, X-Men Omega. It's factory mess up as 2 foil covers instead of 1. Okay. I don't know anything about X-Men Omega because that's when I don't know when that came out, but Marvel for a while was publishing 75 X-Men books a month. In terms of not to be meant for kids. Well, Calvin and Hobbes was meant for kids, and it was written. It's almost like it's written by a child psychiatrist, right? And so Calvin and Hobbes deals with some tough themes, but it deals with them in a way that kids can understand. And not every every Calvin and Hobbes strip was super serious and hardcore and all that. And Calvin and Hobbes never went super dark. But I'm not asking for stuff to be dark, just for darkness to not be rejected because a story dared to push stuff. But the problem, and this is where you're missing the point, artists want to push stuff. That's what and this is one of the biggest mistakes that you go to art school and they'll teach you this, and artists all believe it. And, of artists of every flavor, whether a musician, an actor, whatever, the vast majority, not 100%, but the vast majority of them all believe that art always has to push the limits. You always have to push the boundaries of what's acceptable by society. And so that means that, we want to show just a little bit more to the kids. It's okay if we put one more F-bomb in a kid's movie. It's okay if we just flash just a brief second of nudity. No, that's okay. The kids can handle it. It's okay if, and then it becomes another F-bomb, and then it becomes a little bit more nudity, and then it becomes, and it's, no, I don't, in the words of the character who's not really Picard, but was played by Patrick Stewart, the line must be drawn. It is not okay to sell, stuff like that to kids. Heck, there are some adults that shouldn't be reading that stuff. Good rule of thumb, if something has collector's edition printed on the cover, then it's not one. That is 100% true. I got a bunch of old Spawn comics an old past friend gave me, and they're all in plastic. Well-kept, might be worth something. Depends. Spawn is a trickier one to know. But silver, honestly, you're not going to get a big value comic book generally unless you're in at least Silver Age. But, some Bronze Age, but very little Dark Age. I think it was Variant Comics that did the video the other day saying that Onslaught is inevitable in X-Men 97. Okay, well, I don't know if Onslaught is inevitable or not, but we'll see. I mean, I didn't care for X-Men 97 nearly as much as everybody else because I thought they did exactly what we're talking about here. They made it too adult. Everybody's like, oh, it's just like a continuation of the old 96 series. No, it's not, because it's like the old 96 series, except let's amp up all the sex. Let's amp up the violence. Let's make it more adult instead of making it so, hey, I can take my kids, sit down with them, and we can watch the classic X-Men show, and then we can watch X-Men 97 to continue the story. Now, I know there are some parents that are going to say, well, what's the harm in them seeing a little bit? And it's like, well, you know what? I'm sorry. I do not believe that we need to compromise morality just so the kids get a little bit more edgy content. X-Men Omega was the final of the Age of Apocalypse series, the one Legion kills Xavier in the past. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's why I didn't know it, because Age of Apocalypse I totally checked out on, was not interested. So you're saying the American educational system ruined art. I'm saying that it helped. A hint of areola never hurt anyone. Well, you see, that's where it starts, honestly. And I don't like it. In fact, there are some comic books, even back in the day, that I think took it too far. There are issues of Fantastic Four that if I were the editor for Marvel, I would not have allowed to happen, because they show too much, in my opinion. Issues in my collection. Now, do they actually have what would be considered nudity? Technically, no. What they would do is do things like, oh, well, the Invisible Woman is naked, but she's invisible, so they just draw her outline, but they draw her outline leaving very little to the imagination. So, especially when she's standing with her back to the camera, so to speak. Philip says, I also what I was talking about in terms of not being kids, I was talking about my Aliens vs. Predator toy collection, my Terminator toys, Jurassic Park toys. Well, yeah, but those, you see, those, we call them toys. Those aren't toys. Those are, little statues that they sell for ridiculously high prices and pretend that they're collector's items. Like anybody other than a collector is going to buy them. So if they made 5,000 of them, guess what? There's still 5,000 of them out there, unless, someone dropped one by accident and it broke and that person is really upset. But now there's 4,999. When I was a teenager, I bought a comic adaptation of Star Trek 3. I read that comic numerous times. I eventually lost it somehow. I don't think I ever had the start. I know I had a Star Trek the Motion Picture adaptation. I don't think I had Star Trek 3, but I might have, actually. I just don't think I ever had Star Trek 2. No, they were toys. Okay. Well, but are they, okay. How detailed are they? Because Kids' toys are generally not that detailed. Collectibles are detailed, and they market. They say, "Oh yeah, it's a toy. It just costs $30 for an action figure." But if you say so, I'll take your word for it. But there have been some very inappropriate toys that made, like, I know they made a RoboCop action figure for kids, and they shouldn't have. But that's the problem, is that they'll make these R-rated movies, and then they'll make kids' toys based on R-rated movies, and then the kids want to see the R-rated movies, right? It's sort of like biting action if you press their legs. That's funny. And blood. Of course they did. Do they have articulation, or are they posed? Yeah, like most kids' toys at most would have like 8 points of articulation. So, well, maybe 9 if you count the head. You'd have two in each arm, 2 in each leg, and the head would, be on a little pivot. The big one with the stiff sculpted capes and interchangeable headstands are statues, not toys. Well, I'm just saying, like, if you look at, like, if you go to, remember when, I don't know if they're still around, but like, oh gosh, what was, I'm trying to remember what the store was called, but it was like a video store. They probably don't exist anymore because it was a video store. They sold DVDs and Blu-rays and stuff. But in the back, they would have like action figures, and they'd be packed in blister packs, just like action figures. They'd be the same size as an action figure, but they would be very, very detailed replicas of characters from various movies, and usually R-rated movies. And so, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. But I do know that they did make some genuine kids' toys based on R-rated franchises, and I do think that's completely inappropriate. So when does this Daredevil start? Is it this week? No, sadly, Stan, it is, according to the trailer, it is March 4th. So we have about 6 weeks to go. Case in point, for example, the Xenomorph figure, figures for aliens marketed to kids. Yeah, I don't like that kind of thing. If you make like if you go to a comic book store and they have the Xenomorph statue for collectibles, it's like $300. I'm totally okay with that, because some little kid's not going to spend his allowance on a $300 statue. However, the fact that, and this is the problem, is that it's all this whole thing about we got to get edgy, right? And so how do you get a kid to see an R-rated movie? Well, obviously, if mom and dad aren't going to take the kid to see the R-rated movie, right? Unless the kid can get an action figure from the R-rated movie, and then they can say, oh, well, if they have kids' toys, it can't be that bad. It's like when I saw Wicked, and there were a bunch of people taking their little kids to see Wicked, thinking that this was a kids' movie. Why? Because it's basically a prequel to The Wizard of Oz, and The Wizard of Oz is a great family film. Except Wicked is not a family film. Sure, it's PG-13, it's not R-rated or anything, but it's definitely not a family film. Unfortunately, it's the whole edginess thing. The reason that Wicked exists today is because artists want to get edgy. And so, hey, what happens if we find out that the Wicked Witch of the West really was the love child of some random munchkin woman and the Wizard of Oz? And I wish I was making that up. All right, so with that, I am going to wrap it up, because I'm sure my wife is going to kill me at this point, because she came up because she was like, when are you coming down? So thank you guys for hanging out with me again. And remember, you are the salt of the earth. I'm the salty trekker, and I don't know what the deal with Mr. Know-It-All is. Hopefully we'll see him soon.